The clock struck 7 on a chilly October evening in New York City. The streets were slick with rain, and the air carried the faint smell of wet pavement mixed with the aroma of roasted chestnuts from street vendors. Christopher Blake stepped out of his sleek black car, adjusting the collar of his overcoat to shield himself from the drizzle. He had spent the entire day locked in meetings, discussing deals and strategies that could shape industries. Now all he wanted was a quiet place to eat something simple, a burger or maybe a slice of pie, and clear his mind. Instead of heading to one of the upscale restaurants he frequented, Christopher decided to try something different. He had passed by this little diner several times during late-night drives through the city. Its neon sign blinked softly against the dark sky, reading Joe's Diner in faded letters. It looked like the kind of place where time slowed down, where people came not just for food but for comfort. He pushed open the door, hearing the familiar jingle of a bell above it, and stepped inside. The warmth hit him immediately, chasing away the cold dampness clinging to his skin. The diner wasn't busy, just a handful of patrons scattered across the room. Some sat alone, nursing cups of coffee, while others chatted quietly over plates of fries and milkshakes. The walls were lined with faded photographs of old New York, and the jukebox in the corner played a soft jazz tune that blended seamlessly with the hum of conversation. It felt worlds apart from the polished boardrooms and high-rise offices Christopher usually inhabited. He slid into a booth near the window, glancing around as he settled in. That's when he saw her. At first, he didn't recognize her. She moved gracefully between tables, balancing trays loaded with plates and drinks. Her movements were efficient yet unhurried, and there was a certain calmness about her despite the obvious fatigue etched into her features. But then she turned slightly, and their eyes met briefly before she looked away again. Something clicked in Christopher's mind. Rachel Myers, high school classmate. It had been more than a decade since they'd last seen each other. Back then, Rachel had been the quiet girl who always sat in the front row of their science class, raising her hand confidently whenever the teacher asked a question. She wasn't part of the popular crowd, nor did she try to be. Instead, she kept to herself, focusing on her studies and occasionally helping classmates struggling with assignments. Christopher remembered her as someone who seemed destined for greatness, someone who would go on to do big things. But here she was now, dressed in a plain white blouse and black apron, carrying empty plates back to the kitchen. There was no trace of the bright-eyed teenager he once knew. In her place stood a woman who looked older than her years, burdened by responsibilities and weighed down by life's hardships. Yet even in her tired state, there was still a gentleness about her, a quiet dignity that made her stand out. Christopher watched her for a moment longer, debating whether to approach her. He wasn't sure how she would react if he introduced himself. Would she even remember him? They hadn't been close friends after all. Still, curiosity got the better of him. After signaling to the waitress, a middle-aged woman named Linda, to bring him a menu, he waited until Rachel passed by his table again. "Excuse me," he said, catching her attention. His voice was calm but warm, designed to put her at ease. "Do I know you from somewhere?" Rachel paused mid-step, her tray balanced expertly in one hand. She glanced at him, her brow furrowing slightly as she tried to place his face. Then, recognition dawned, and her eyes widened ever so slightly. "Christopher Blake?" she asked, her tone uncertain. "The very same," he replied, offering a small smile. "It's been a long time." Rachel nodded slowly, setting the tray down on a nearby table. "Yeah, it has. I didn't expect to see you here." Her voice was softer than he remembered, tinged with surprise and perhaps a hint of nervousness. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, clearly unsure of what to say next. "I could say the same about you," Christopher said lightly, gesturing to the diner. "This seems like quite a change from what I imagined you'd be doing." For a split second, Rachel's expression faltered, and Christopher caught a glimpse of something deeper, something unspoken. But just as quickly, she masked it with a polite smile. "Life takes unexpected turns sometimes," she said simply. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Something to eat?" Christopher shook his head. Not right now, thank you. Actually, I was hoping we could talk for a minute, if you're not too busy. Rachel hesitated, glancing toward the counter where Linda was busy refilling salt shakers. Let me check with my manager, she said finally. I'll be right back. As she walked away, Christopher leaned back in his seat, studying the diner more closely. Despite its worn appearance, there was a charm to the place, a sense of history embedded in every crack in the tile floor and every scratch on the Formica tabletops. He wondered how long Rachel had been working here, what had led her to this point in her life. High school memories resurfaced, snippets of conversations, and fleeting impressions that painted a picture of a girl with big dreams and boundless potential. What had happened to derail those plans? Moments later, Rachel returned, pulling out the chair opposite him and sitting down with a weary sigh. I've got 10 minutes, she said, folding her hands on the table. What did you want to talk about? Christopher hesitated, unsure of where to begin. I guess I just wanted to catch up, he said finally. We haven't seen each other in, 15 years, maybe more? Something like that, Rachel agreed. Her gaze drifted toward the window where rain continued to patter against the glass. Things have changed a lot since then. Clearly, Christopher said, gesturing vaguely toward her apron. I don't mean to pry, but this doesn't seem like where I thought you'd end up. Rachel chuckled dryly, though there was no humor in it. You're not the first person to say that. Believe me, it's not exactly where I planned to be either. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. Christopher waited patiently, giving her space to decide how much, or how little, she wanted to share. Finally, Rachel spoke, her voice low and measured. My dad got sick right after I started college, she explained. Cancer. We didn't have insurance, and the medical bills piled up faster than we could keep track of them. I dropped out to help take care of him and work full-time. By the time he passed away, I was so far behind that going back to school felt impossible. Christopher listened intently, his heart sinking as she recounted her story. He had heard similar tales before, people whose lives were derailed by circumstances beyond their control. But hearing it from Rachel made it feel personal, almost visceral. Here was someone who had once dreamed of changing the world, reduced to serving burgers and coffee in a rundown diner. And now, he prompted gently. Rachel shrugged, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Now I just do what I can to get by. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Christopher nodded, though his mind was racing. There was so much more he wanted to ask, so many questions swirling in his head. But he knew better than to push too hard, especially not here, not now. For now, he simply offered a sympathetic smile. Well, I'm glad I ran into you, he said sincerely. It's good to see you again, Rachel, even if the circumstances are different than I expected. Thanks, she replied, standing up as a customer waved her over. I should probably get back to work, but thanks for stopping by. As she walked away, Christopher couldn't shake the image of her tired smile, the way her shoulders sagged under the weight of invisible burdens. He stayed in the diner for another hour, nursing a cup of coffee and watching her move between tables with practiced efficiency. Each step she took seemed heavier than the last, yet she never complained, never faltered. When he finally left, stepping back out into the rainy night, Christopher found himself unable to stop thinking about Rachel. There was something about her story that resonated deeply with him, stirring emotions he hadn't felt in years. As he climbed back into his car and drove away, he realized one thing with absolute clarity. He couldn't just walk away. Not this time. The next morning, Rachel woke up to the sound of rain tapping against her bedroom window. It was still dark outside, the kind of gloomy weather that made it hard to get out of bed. She lay there for a moment, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying the events of the previous night in her mind. Christopher Blake showing up at the diner felt surreal, like something out of a dream or maybe a movie. She hadn't seen him since high school graduation, and even then, they weren't close. Why had he come back into her life now? And why did his presence feel so unsettling? Rachel sighed, throwing off the blanket and swinging her legs over the side of the bed. Her tiny studio apartment was chilly as usual, so she grabbed the oversized sweater draped over the chair beside her desk. As she pulled it on, her eyes fell on the stack of unpaid bills sitting on the corner of the table. Rent was due in 2 days, and she didn't have enough saved up yet. Another late fee would mean skipping meals later in the week, but what choice did she have? She shuffled to the kitchenette to make herself a cup of coffee, leaning against the counter as the machine sputtered to life. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the room, offering a brief sense of comfort. Sitting down at her desk, she wrapped her hands around the warm mug and stared out the window. The city outside looked gray and dreary, mirroring her mood. Raindrops slid down the glass, distorting the view of the busy street below. People hurried along the sidewalk, umbrellas bobbing like colorful mushrooms in the drizzle. Her thoughts drifted back to Christopher. He seemed different from how she remembered him in high school. Back then, he had been confident, almost arrogant, the kind of guy who knew exactly where he was headed in life. Now, though, there was something softer about him, something thoughtful. When he asked to talk to her at the diner, she hadn't known what to expect. Part of her wondered if he was just being polite, trying to reconnect out of nostalgia. But there was another part of her, a smaller, quieter voice that suspected there was more to it. Just as she was about to push those thoughts aside and focus on the day ahead, her phone buzzed on the desk. Picking it up, she saw an unknown number flashing on the screen. Hesitating for a moment, she answered cautiously. "Hello?" she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Rachel?" "It's Christopher Blake," came the reply. His tone was calm and professional, but there was a warmth beneath it that put her at ease. "Oh, hi," she stammered, caught off guard. "How did you get my number?" "I spoke to Linda at the diner earlier today," he explained. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to see if we could meet again, somewhere quieter this time." "There's something I'd like to discuss with you." Rachel frowned, gripping the phone tighter. "What do you mean? What kind of discussion?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if Christopher were choosing his words carefully. "It's about your future," he said finally. "I think we can help each other." Her heart skipped a beat. Help each other? What did that even mean? Was this some sort of business proposal? Or worse, was he expecting something in return? Rachel swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm not sure I understand," she said slowly. "Why are you doing this?" "We barely know each other." Christopher chuckled softly, the sound oddly reassuring. "You're right. We don't know each other well. But sometimes all it takes is seeing someone's potential to want to help them. And Rachel, I've always believed you have incredible potential." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. Potential. The word echoed in her mind, stirring memories she had long buried. Once upon a time, she had dreams, big ones. Dreams of becoming a scientist, of making discoveries that could change lives. But somewhere along the way, those dreams had slipped through her fingers, replaced by survival and sacrifice. Hearing Christopher say those words now felt strange, almost painful. It reminded her of everything she had lost. "I'll be honest with you," Christopher continued, breaking the silence. "I don't expect anything in return. This isn't charity. It's an opportunity for both of us. Can we meet tomorrow afternoon? Just for coffee or lunch? I promise I won't take up too much of your time." Rachel hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. Something about his offer felt too good to be true. Yet, deep down, she couldn't deny the flicker of hope that sparked within her. Maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to turn things around. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where should we meet?" They agreed on a small cafe near Central Park, one that Rachel passed every day on her way to work. After hanging up, she sat there for a long time, staring at her phone as if it might hold answers to questions she hadn't fully formed yet. What did Christopher really want from her? And why did she feel so conflicted about accepting his help? Later that evening, after finishing her shift at the diner, Rachel called her best friend Mia. They had known each other since childhood, and Mia had always been the one person Rachel could count on when things got tough. "Your meeting." "Who?" Mia exclaimed, nearly dropping her drink. "Christopher Blake, the billionaire?" "He's not the billionaire to me," Rachel shot back, rolling her eyes. "He's just a guy from high school." "A guy from high school who happens to own half of Manhattan," Mia countered, raising an eyebrow. "Come on, Rach. This is huge. What does he want?" "I don't know," Rachel admitted, pacing back and forth in her tiny living room. "He says he wants to help me, to give me an opportunity, but I don't trust it. Nothing in life comes for free, especially not from someone like him." Mia leaned forward, her expression turning serious. "Listen, I get why you're hesitant. Trust issues are valid. But think about it. What if he's telling the truth? What if this really is your chance to get back on track? You've worked yourself to death for years, Rach. Don't you deserve a break?" Rachel sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "It's not that simple," she muttered. "Even if he means well, I can't just accept handouts. What happens if I fail? Or worse, what if he expects something from me later?" Mia sighed, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "Then set boundaries. Make sure you're clear about what you're willing to do and what you're not. But please, don't let fear stop you from taking this leap. You've earned it." The following afternoon, Rachel arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, her stomach tied in knots. She chose a table by the window, ordering a latte to calm her nerves. As she waited, she watched people stroll by outside, their faces hidden beneath umbrellas as the rain continued to fall. Every time the door opened, she glanced up anxiously, only to look away again when it wasn't him. Finally, Christopher walked in, shaking droplets of water from his coat before spotting her. He smiled warmly as he approached, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, placing his briefcase on the floor. "I know this must feel strange." "You could say that," Rachel replied, managing a small smile. "So, what's this all about?" Christopher took a deep breath, leaning forward slightly. "I want to fund your education," he said simply. "Whatever it takes. Tuition, books, living expenses, I'll cover it all. All I ask is that you focus on finishing your degree and pursuing your dreams." Rachel stared at him, stunned. Her mind raced, trying to process what he had just said. Education, dreams? Those words felt foreign now, relics of a past she had almost forgotten. "Why?" she asked finally, her voice trembling. "Why would you do this for me?" Christopher met her gaze steadily. "Because I believe in you," he said. "And because everyone deserves a second chance." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the rain began to ease, sunlight breaking through the clouds. Rachel felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. This was real. This was happening. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Let's do it." As they shook hands across the table, Rachel realized something profound. Maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over yet. It had been 3 months since Rachel Myers stepped foot inside a classroom. The last time she was here, it had been different. She was younger, hopeful, and free of the weight that life would later pile onto her shoulders. Now, as she walked through the bustling hallways of Columbia University, she felt like an outsider looking in. Students rushed past her, chatting excitedly about assignments or upcoming exams, their backpacks slung casually over one shoulder. They seemed so carefree, so certain of their futures. Rachel couldn't help but wonder if she belonged here anymore. Her first day back in school was overwhelming. After years of working long hours at the diner and managing everyday struggles, sitting in a lecture hall felt surreal. She clutched her notebook tightly, trying to steady her nerves as she found a seat near the back of the room. The professor began speaking, his voice calm but authoritative, diving straight into complex equations and theories. Rachel scribbled furiously, determined not to fall behind. But halfway through the class, doubt crept in. Could she really do this? Had too much time passed? Was she chasing something that was no longer meant for her? When the lecture ended, Rachel lingered in her seat, staring blankly at the pages of notes she had taken. Most of them were messy, incomplete, and barely legible. A hand tapped her shoulder, startling her out of her thoughts. "Hey," said a cheerful voice. "Are you new here?" Rachel looked up to see a girl around her age smiling warmly. She had curly blonde hair tied back in a loose bun and wore a bright yellow hoodie that stood out against the sea of neutral tones around them. Yeah," Rachel replied hesitantly. "I mean, I used to go to school here years ago, but I'm starting over now." The girl's smile widened. "Oh, cool. I'm Emily. What's your major?" "Biochemistry," Rachel answered, surprised by how easily the word rolled off her tongue after all these years. It still felt strange to say it aloud, like putting on an old coat that didn't quite fit anymore. "No way. Me too, Emily," exclaimed, plopping down in the chair next to her. "You'll love Professor Carter. He's tough, but he knows his stuff. If you ever need help, let me know. I've been here a couple of semesters already, so I can show you the ropes." For the first time that day, Rachel felt a flicker of relief. Maybe she wasn't completely alone in this. Outside of classes, Rachel threw herself into studying. Every spare moment was spent either at the library or hunched over her laptop in her tiny apartment. Christopher had insisted she quit her job at the diner to focus solely on school, but Rachel refused. She kept a few shifts each week, not because she needed the money anymore, but because she didn't want to lose sight of where she came from. Working at the diner reminded her of why she was doing this, of the sacrifices she had made and the people who depended on her. One evening, after closing up the diner, Rachel sat at her desk with a cup of coffee, reviewing notes for her upcoming chemistry exam. Her eyes burned from hours of reading and her back ached from sitting in the same position for too long. Just as she was about to call it a night, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Christopher. "How's everything going?" it read. Rachel stared at the screen for a moment before typing back. "Good. Busy, but good." Seconds later, another message appeared. "That's great to hear. Remember, don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything." She smiled faintly, setting the phone aside. Christopher had checked in with her regularly since their meeting at the cafe, always asking how things were progressing. At first, his messages made her uneasy. She worried he expected updates or gratitude, but over time she realized he genuinely cared about her success. Still, there was a part of her that felt uneasy accepting so much from him. She wanted to prove she could handle this on her own, even though she knew deep down she wouldn't be here without his help. As weeks turned into months, Rachel began to find her rhythm. Classes became less intimidating, and she started forming connections with classmates like Emily. During group study sessions, she discovered that teaching others helped solidify her understanding of difficult concepts. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of excitement about learning again. Biochemistry wasn't just a subject, it was a puzzle waiting to be solved, a gateway to discoveries that could change lives. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were late nights when frustration bubbled over, when equations refused to make sense no matter how many times she worked through them. There were moments when self-doubt whispered cruelly in her ear, telling her she didn't belong here, that she was wasting everyone's time. On those nights she called Mia, who listened patiently and reminded her why she had started this journey in the first place. "You're doing amazing, Rach," Mia would say firmly. "Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise." Slowly, but surely Rachel began to believe her. One afternoon as she left the library, Rachel noticed a flyer taped to a bulletin board outside. It advertised a summer internship program at a prestigious research lab downtown. Applicants needed to submit a proposal outlining their area of interest and how they planned to contribute to ongoing projects. Rachel stopped in her tracks, her heart racing. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she dreamed of, a chance to apply what she was learning in real-world scenarios. But applying meant stepping far outside her comfort zone. She would have to write a detailed proposal, interview with experts in the field, and compete against students who likely had more experience than she did. What if she wasn't ready? What if she failed? Back in her apartment, Rachel stared at the blank document on her laptop screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Doubt gnawed at her, threatening to pull her under. Then she remembered something Christopher had told her during one of their conversations. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of the process. Taking a deep breath, she began typing. Slowly, words filled the page. By the time she finished, dawn was breaking. Outside her window, exhausted but proud, Rachel submitted her application just minutes before the deadline. Weeks later, she received an email notifying her that she had been selected for an interview. Her hands trembled as she read the message, tears welling up in her eyes. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream, not cautiously but boldly. If she could make it through this, if she could land the internship, then maybe, just maybe, she could truly start over. That evening, Rachel picked up her phone and dialed Christopher's number. When he answered, his tone was warm and familiar. "I got an interview," she blurted out, unable to contain her excitement. "For a research internship. I wouldn't have even applied if it weren't for you." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a soft laugh. "Rachel, this is all you. You've earned every bit of it." His words made her chest swell with pride. As she hung up the phone, she glanced at the framed diploma hanging crookedly on her wall, the one reminder of the dreams she once had. This time, she thought, she wouldn't let them slip away. Rachel's internship began on a sunny Monday morning, and from the moment she stepped into the research lab, she felt a mix of excitement and intimidation. The facility was state-of-the-art, equipped with tools and technology far beyond anything she had encountered during her university studies. Scientists moved purposefully between stations, their faces serious but engaged as they worked on experiments that could shape the future of renewable energy. Rachel clutched her notebook tightly, reminding herself that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. Her supervisor, Dr. Elena Torres, greeted her warmly and gave her a quick tour of the lab. "Welcome aboard," Dr. Torres said with a smile. "We're excited to have you. You'll be working closely with our team on optimizing biofuel production using algae. It's challenging, but I think you'll find it rewarding." Rachel nodded, eagerly, trying to absorb every detail. She had read about algae-based biofuels in her coursework, but seeing the actual process unfold in front of her was awe-inspiring. As Dr. Torres explained the project goals and introduced her to the rest of the team, Rachel couldn't help but feel a spark of pride. This was real science. Work that mattered, work that could make a difference. The first few weeks were overwhelming. Rachel spent long hours poring over data, running tests and troubleshooting equipment malfunctions. There were moments when frustration threatened to overwhelm her, when an experiment failed or results didn't match predictions, but she reminded herself why she was there. Failure wasn't the end. It was part of the learning process. Slowly, but surely she began to find her footing. One afternoon, while analyzing samples under a microscope, Rachel noticed something unusual. The algae cells appeared to be producing higher lipid content than expected, which could significantly improve biofuel efficiency. Excited by her discovery, she flagged down Dr. Torres and explained her findings. "This is impressive," Dr. Torres said after reviewing the data. "Have you considered testing this further? If we can replicate these results, it could be a breakthrough." Encouraged by her supervisor's response, Rachel threw herself into designing follow-up experiments. She collaborated with other researchers, bouncing ideas off them and refining her approach. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive, like she was contributing something meaningful to the world. As the internship progressed, Rachel's confidence grew. She no longer hesitated to ask questions during meetings or offer suggestions based on her observations. Her colleagues treated her like an equal, respecting her input and valuing her contributions. One day, as she presented her latest findings to the team, she caught sight of Christopher standing near the back of the room. He had come to check on her progress without telling her he would be there. After the presentation, Christopher approached her with a proud smile. "That was incredible," he said. "You've come so far." Rachel blushed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thanks. I couldn't have done it without everyone here, including you. Christopher shook his head. Don't sell yourself short. This is all you. Your hard work, your talent. I'm just glad I got to witness it. His words made her chest swell with pride, but they also deepened her resolve. She wanted to prove, not just to Christopher, but to herself, that she was capable of achieving greatness on her own terms. Outside the lab, Rachel continued balancing her new life with reminders of her old one. Though she no longer worked at the diner, she visited occasionally to catch up with Linda and the other staff. They teased her about her fancy scientist job, but always expressed genuine happiness for her success. During one visit, Linda pulled her aside and handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" Rachel asked, puzzled. "It's from us," Linda replied with a wink. "Open it later." When Rachel finally opened the envelope at home, she found a gift card along with a note signed by everyone at the diner. "For coffee breaks when you're saving the world." Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized how much they cared about her. Even though she had left the diner behind, it would always hold a special place in her heart. Despite her growing confidence, doubts still crept in occasionally. Late at night, as she reviewed notes or brainstormed ideas, Rachel sometimes wondered if she was living someone else's dream instead of her own. Was she pursuing renewable energy because it genuinely inspired her, or because it seemed like the kind of impactful work Christopher would approve of? These thoughts gnawed at her, making her question whether she was truly following her passion. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the lab, Rachel called Mia. Her best friend listened patiently as Rachel poured out her fears and insecurities. "I don't know if I'm doing this for me or for him," Rachel admitted, her voice trembling. "What if I'm just trying to live up to expectations?" Mia sighed thoughtfully before responding. "Rach, do you remember why you wanted to study science in the first place before any of this happened?" Rachel paused, thinking back to her high school days. She remembered staying up late reading textbooks, fascinated by how molecules interacted and how chemical reactions could solve real-world problems. Science had been her escape, a way to imagine a better future. "Yes," she said softly. "I loved it. I still do." "Then that's your answer," Mia said firmly. "It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you're passionate about it, that's enough." The next morning, Rachel returned to the lab with renewed determination. She decided to focus less on external validation and more on the joy of discovery, the thrill of solving puzzles and uncovering truths hidden within nature. Over time, she found herself gravitating toward projects that aligned with her personal interests, such as developing sustainable materials derived from plant waste. Her enthusiasm was contagious, inspiring others to join her in exploring innovative solutions. By the end of her internship, Rachel's contributions had earned widespread recognition within the lab. Dr. Torres offered her a permanent position, praising her creativity and dedication. Accepting the role felt like stepping into a new chapter of her life, one where she was no longer defined by past struggles but by present achievements. On her last day as an intern, Rachel stood outside the lab building, gazing at the city skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about how far she had come, from serving coffee in a diner to conducting groundbreaking research in a world-class facility. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving. As she turned to leave, Christopher texted her, "Congratulations, Rachel. The future belongs to people like you." Smiling, Rachel tucked her phone into her pocket and walked toward the horizon, ready to embrace whatever came next. The night of the gala arrived, and Rachel stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, smoothing out the fabric of her navy blue gown. It was a simple dress, but it fit perfectly, hugging her curves just enough to make her feel confident. She had borrowed it from Mia, who insisted it would be perfect for the occasion. As she adjusted her earrings, one last gift from her mother before she passed away, Rachel couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and anxiety bubbling inside her. This wasn't just any event. Tonight, Christopher Blake was hosting a private gala at his company's headquarters to celebrate innovation in science and technology. Rachel had been invited not only as a guest but also as someone Christopher wanted to honor publicly. When he first mentioned it during one of their meetings, she had tried to decline. "I don't need recognition," she had protested. "I'm just doing what I love." But Christopher had shaken his head firmly. "This isn't about you needing it. It's about showing others what's possible. Your story deserves to be told." Now, standing here on the brink of walking into that glittering world, Rachel felt both grateful and overwhelmed. She didn't belong in places like this, not among the wealthy elite or the scientific pioneers whose names were known worldwide. Yet somehow she found herself stepping into a car provided by Christopher, heading toward the towering skyscraper where the gala was being held. When Rachel arrived, the scene took her breath away. The ballroom was breathtaking, its high ceilings adorned with sparkling chandeliers that cast soft light across the room. Elegant guests moved gracefully between clusters of conversation, their laughter blending with the gentle hum of music playing in the background. Servers carried trays of champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres, weaving through the crowd effortlessly. For a moment, Rachel hesitated at the entrance, feeling completely out of place. Then she spotted Christopher making his way toward her. He looked impeccable in a tailored black suit, his presence commanding yet welcoming. When he reached her, he offered a reassuring smile. "You look incredible," he said warmly. "Are you ready?" Rachel nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her clutch bag. "As ready as I'll ever be." Christopher led her further into the room, introducing her to several prominent figures in the scientific community. Each introduction came with genuine praise for her work and potential. Rachel listened intently, nodding politely while trying to absorb everything happening around her. Despite her nerves, she found herself engaging in conversations about renewable energy solutions and advancements in biochemistry. These were topics she knew well, areas where she felt comfortable. Slowly, her confidence began to grow. Eventually, the host announced that dinner would soon begin and everyone made their way to assigned seats. Rachel found herself seated next to Christopher at a table near the stage. As they settled in, she noticed how effortlessly he navigated the room, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with ease. Watching him, she realized how much thought he had put into bringing her here, not just financially supporting her journey, but ensuring she had opportunities to shine. After dessert, Christopher stepped onto the stage to deliver a speech. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Rachel watched nervously, unsure of what he might say. Would he truly highlight her achievements? Or would this simply be another corporate address? "Ladies and gentlemen," Christopher began, his voice steady and clear, "tonight we gather to celebrate innovation, the ideas and individuals shaping our future. Among us is someone who embodies the spirit of resilience, determination, and brilliance. Her name is Rachel Myers." Rachel froze as the spotlight shifted to her. All heads turned in her direction, and for a split second she considered bolting from the room. But then Christopher continued, his words wrapping around her like a safety net. Rachel grew up dreaming of becoming a scientist, a dream nearly extinguished by life's challenges. Yet, despite overwhelming odds, she never gave up. Today, she is completing groundbreaking research in renewable energy, work that could revolutionize how we power our world. Rachel reminds us all that talent exists everywhere. We simply need to create pathways for it to flourish. The room erupted in applause, and Rachel felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She stood awkwardly, unsure of whether to acknowledge the attention or stay seated. Finally, Christopher motioned for her to join him on stage. Reluctantly, she rose from her chair and walked up the steps, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Standing beside him under the bright lights, Rachel scanned the sea of faces watching her. Some smiled encouragingly, others nodded respectfully. For once, she didn't feel like an outsider looking in. Instead, she felt seen, truly seen for the first time in years. "Thank you," she said into the microphone, her voice trembling but sincere. I don't know what to say except that none of this would have been possible without people believing in me when I struggled to believe in myself. To Christopher, my family, and everyone who supported me along the way, thank you. This is proof that no matter how hard things get, there's always hope for a brighter tomorrow. Her words earned another round of applause, louder this time. As she stepped off the stage, Christopher caught her arm gently. You did great, he whispered. Proud of you. Later that evening, after most of the guests had left, Rachel found herself standing on a balcony overlooking the city skyline. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain from earlier in the day. Below, the streets shimmered with reflected lights, cars moving like tiny dots against the vast expanse of concrete and steel. Christopher joined her moments later, leaning casually against the railing. How are you feeling? He asked, glancing sideways at her. Like I'm living someone else's life, Rachel admitted with a small laugh. It's surreal. Everything that's happened these past few months, I never imagined it would turn out like this. Christopher studied her profile thoughtfully. You earned every bit of it, Rachel. Don't forget that. She sighed, turning to face him fully. Why did you do all this? Really? I've been wondering since the beginning. For a moment, Christopher was silent, gazing out at the horizon. Then he spoke, his tone soft but firm. Because I saw something in you, spark that reminded me of why I started my own journey. Too often, people with incredible potential are held back by circumstances beyond their control. I wanted to give you the chance I wish more people had growing up. And honestly, seeing you succeed has inspired me too. Rachel blinked, taken aback by his honesty. I don't know how to repay you, she said quietly. You already have, Christopher replied, smiling. By proving that dreams can come true, even when life tries to take them away. As they stood there together, the city sprawling endlessly before them, Rachel felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. This wasn't the end of her journey, it was only the beginning. Months had passed since the gala, and Rachel's life had transformed in ways she never imagined. She completed her degree with honors, earning accolades for her research in renewable energy. Her internship turned into a full-time position at the lab, where she worked alongside some of the brightest minds in the field. Every day brought new challenges and opportunities, each one pushing her closer to achieving the dreams she once thought were lost forever. But despite all her success, Rachel often found herself reflecting on how far she'd come and how much she owed to Christopher Blake. Without his intervention, she doubted she would have ever left the diner or rediscovered her passion for science. Yet as grateful as she was, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something unresolved between them, something deeper than gratitude or admiration. One crisp autumn afternoon, Rachel decided to visit Central Park. It had become her favorite place to unwind after long days at the lab. There was something calming about the rustling leaves and the gentle breeze that carried the scent of earth and wood smoke. Sitting on a park bench overlooking the lake, she opened her journal and began jotting down notes. Ideas for her next project, reminders of things she needed to do, random thoughts that flitted through her mind. As she wrote, a question lingered at the edges of her thoughts. Why had Christopher gone so far out of his way to help her? What motivated him to invest so much time, money, and effort into someone he barely knew? She understood his explanation about seeing potential and wanting to create opportunities, but it felt incomplete. There had to be more to it. That evening, Rachel picked up her phone and hesitated before dialing Christopher's number. They hadn't spoken in weeks, not because they were avoiding each other, but because both had been busy with their respective lives. When he answered, his voice was warm and familiar. Rachel, he said, sounding genuinely pleased. How are you? I'm good, she replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Do you have a minute? Of course, he said. What's on your mind? Rachel took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. I've been thinking a lot lately about everything you've done for me, and I guess I just want to understand why. Not that I'm ungrateful, I am, more than you'll ever know, but I feel like there's something I'm missing, something you haven't told me. There was a pause on the other end of the line. and for a moment, Rachel worried she had overstepped. Then Christopher spoke, his tone softer than usual. "You're right," he admitted. "There is more to it. But I wasn't sure if I should share it, or if you'd even care to hear it." "Try me," Rachel encouraged gently. Christopher sighed as if gathering his thoughts. "When I saw you at the diner that night, it hit me hard. You reminded me of myself, or rather, who I used to be. Before I built my company, before I became the billionaire, I was just a kid working 2 jobs to pay for community college. I didn't have anyone looking out for me back then, no one offering me a hand when I needed it most. So when I saw you, standing there serving coffee and looking so tired yet determined, it struck a chord. I saw what could have happened to me if things had gone differently." Rachel listened intently, her heart swelling with empathy. She had always assumed Christopher's success came easily, that he had been born into privilege and opportunity. Hearing this side of his story changed everything. "I wanted to give you the chance I never had," he continued. "Not because I pity you, but because I believe in the power of second chances. And Rachel, watching you succeed has reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. You've inspired me as much as I've tried to inspire you." Tears welled up in Rachel's eyes as she absorbed his words. For so long she had viewed herself as someone defined by failure and hardship. But now, hearing Christopher speak about her with such respect and admiration, she realized she was more than her struggles. She was resilient, capable, and worthy of every opportunity that came her way. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully express how much this means to me." "You already have," Christopher replied softly. "Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep chasing your dreams. That's all the thanks I need." The next morning, Rachel returned to the park. This time, she didn't bring her journal. Instead, she sat quietly on the bench, letting the sounds of nature wash over her. Children laughed nearby, dogs barked playfully, and leaves crunched underfoot as joggers passed by. It was a beautiful day, filled with promise and possibility. As she gazed at the lake, Rachel allowed herself to dream again, not cautiously, but boldly. She envisioned a future where her research led to real change, where renewable energy became accessible to communities around the world. She pictured herself mentoring others, helping them find their own paths just as Christopher had helped her. Most importantly, she imagined a version of herself who was confident, fulfilled, and unafraid to take risks. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her reverie. It was a message from Emily, inviting her to lunch later that week. Smiling, Rachel typed back a quick response before slipping the device away. As she stood to leave, she glanced one last time at the shimmering water, feeling a profound sense of peace. Life hadn't turned out the way she planned, but maybe that was okay. Maybe the detours and setbacks weren't meant to break her. They were meant to shape her, to prepare her for something greater. Whatever lay ahead, Rachel knew she was ready. For the first time in years, she truly believed in herself.